Breaking Barriers in Education, Little Rock Nine. It all began September 4th, 1957, when 9 African Americans were denied the ability to enter the Arkansas Central High School. In this video documentary, we will be explaining the events that this occurred in. Brown v. Board. The Brown v. Board of Education was a landmark, and in 1954, the Supreme Court, in which the justices thought that it was unconstitutional that children of racial segregation go to public schools. In May of 1955, the court issued a second case known as Brown v. Board of Education. The federal courts and the directed district courts and the school boards were to proceed with an act of desegregation. Eventually, the governor, Orval Faubus, of Arkansas called out the National Guard to prevent the 9 students from entering the school. After an intense standoff, the president deployed federal troops, and the 9 students were allowed to go into the school under guard. This is video footage of Little Rock 9, the first day they went to Little Rock Central High School in Arkansas. The NAACP and their role. The National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. By the 1950s, Legal Defense and Educational Fund was headed by Thurgood Marshall, who secured the rest of these goals through the Brown v. Board of Education in 1954, which outlawed segregation in public schools. So how did the NAACP play a part in the Little Rock Nine? Well, they recruited 9 students to attempt to integrate into Central High School in Little Rock. They were recruited by Daisy Bates, the president of the NAACP at the time. Minnie Jean Brown was born September 11th, 1941 in Little Rock, Arkansas. She married her spouse Roy Trickery in 1967. They had 6 kids together. Terrence Roberts was born December 3rd, 1941 in Little Rock, Arkansas. He then married his wife Rita Roberts. Elizabeth Eckford was born October 4th, 1941 in Little Rock, Arkansas. Later in her life, she had her son Eric Eckford. Ernest Green was born September 22nd, 1941. He also was born in Little Rock. He married Phyllis Green and had 3 kids with her. Thelma Mothershed was born on November 29th, 1940 in Bloomsburg, Texas. Gloria Ray was born September 26, 1942 in Little Rock, Arkansas. Melba Patillo was born December 7, 1941 in Little Rock, Arkansas. She married John Beals and had 3 kids with him. Jefferson Thomas was born September 19, 1942. He then married his wife, Mary Thomas, and he died September 5, 2010. Carletta Walls was born December 18, 1942 in Little Rock, Arkansas. She married Isla Lanier. Dwight David Eisenhower sending paratroopers to Little Rock. The Little Rock governor, Orval Faubus, was technically breaking the law by not letting the 9 black students into the school. So President Eisenhower had put the Arkansas National Guard into federal control and sent in 1,000 U.S. Army paratroopers from the 101st Airborne Division to assist in restoring order in Little Rock. Eventually, the idea had worked, and the African American students were allowed to enroll without further violent disturbances. The law was upheld, but the president was criticized both by those who felt he had not done enough to ensure that the African Americans had civil rights by enrolling into the school. Orval Faubus deploying the National Guard. The National Guard was drawn into conflict when the governor of Arkansas, Orval Faubus, ordered the National Guard to preserve peace by turning away black students who were attempting to integrate Little Rock Central High School. On the second day of school, 9 African American students arrived and were accompanied by a small interracial group of the government department. There they encountered a large white mob in front of the school. The white mob began to throw stones. They shouted and they were threatening to kill them. In addition, about 270 soldiers of the National Guard were sent by the government and were ordered to block the school's entrance. Fabius had then declared his opposition to integration and his intention to defy federal court order. He said, "The federal government has no authority to tell the state government for what purposes it may levy taxes and how the tax money is expended."
3 out of the 9 students that graduated. On May 27, 1958, 3 African American students graduated from Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas: Ernest Green, Coretta Walls, and Jefferson Thomas. Ernest Green went to Michigan State University and held several high positions in the government. Coletta Walls also attended Michigan State University, but later graduated from what is now Northern Colorado. She has worked there on the border regiments. Last but not least, Jefferson Thomas did not attend college, but was a minister and a businessman that later served in the Army. On January 15, 1996, 9 of the Little Rock Nine members met up on the Oprah Winfrey Show. Nearly 40 years later, the members of the Little Rock Nine came face to face with some of their bullies.
Joining me now are 3 of the white students who admit in one form or another to being part of that ugliness in Little Rock. This is Ann Bolson. As she appeared in 1957, she was chanting the words 2468, "We don't want to integrate." And Ann says she is now ashamed of that schoolyard chant. Jean Porter regrets being a silent witness to the crimes by fellow white students, including seeing them put thumbtacks on Melba's chair and also witnessing boys in gym urinating on the lockers of Ernest Green. And David Sontag came here today, he says, to apologize to Minnie Jean for an altercation in the cafeteria. What happened?
Oh, I just went in the cafeteria and I'd sort of been dared by other kids, to retaliate for Minnie Jean for having poured chili on someone's head earlier. And so I did it. But it was not done out of hate.
What was it done out of?
It was just done out of ignorance.
Mm-hmm.
Of not understanding her plight.
Mm-hmm.
And the plight of all of them. We didn't really know. We weren't walking in their shoes. We didn't put ourselves in their shoes. And I know that I didn't treat them the way I would have wanted to be treated.
How did you treat them?
I don't necessarily remember being ugly, straightforward to any of them individually, but just being a part of a group that would, chant and say negative things.
Mm-hmm. Are you the reason Minnie Jean was expelled?
I may be part of the reason.
Uh-huh. So you came here today, what?
I am genuinely sorry for any negative things that I did at that time. I was really acting as a child that was not prepared for the moment.
Mm-hmm. And you are now here because you were shamed.
Yes, I am. Mm-hmm. I knew Carlotta just because she had a locker close to me, and we would,
And that's how I recognized you off the bat. I remember you. I remember your.
In conclusion to this video documentary, the Little Rock Nine broke barriers in education and changed the future for all other African American students in the United States. In conclusion, the 9 students of Little Rock had pretty successful lives. 3 of the 9 students made it through high school. They were Jefferson Thomas, Ernest Green, and Clara Wells. Clara Wells and Ernest Green went to college, and Jefferson Thomas, he served in the Vietnam War. The rest of the 9 ended up getting successful jobs and had happy families.